My friend, listen closely. Your life is not a mistake. You are not here by accident. Before you ever breathed your first breath, God had a plan for you. A holy, sacred assignment. Something only you could do. Something your name was written on. But along the way, people came into your life who didn't see your value. Worse still, they saw your light, and instead of encouraging it, they tried to extinguish it. Some of you have spent your life bending, breaking, and bleeding just to keep others comfortable. You gave and gave not because you were weak, but because your heart was pure. You tried to help them, heal them, hold them together, even while you were falling apart. But I came to tell you the truth. You cannot fulfill your God-given purpose while you're constantly fixing people who are committed to their own destruction, or worse, committed to yours. There are people who were never meant to have a front row seat in your life. You let them in because you believed in them. You gave them your trust, your time, your tears. But some of them were sent not by God, but by the enemy to derail you from the path God set before you. That's not paranoia. That's spiritual discernment. And if we don't wake up to it, we will keep giving sacred energy to people who only came to sabotage our spirit. God didn't create you to live drained, defeated, and depressed. He created you to walk in purpose, to shine with conviction, to live boldly in His grace. But how can you do that if every time you try to stand, someone pulls you back down? How can you do that? If every conversation leaves you second-guessing your worth? How can you run your race when you're carrying people who refuse to run their own? You see, there comes a time when you have to stop asking, why did they do that to me? And start asking, why did I keep letting them? There comes a time when you stop giving people the benefit of the doubt and start accepting the truth. They damaged you intentionally, not accidentally. Intentionally. They saw your joy and resented it. They saw your kindness and used it. They saw your purpose and tried to poison it. And they smiled in your face while doing it. But here's what I want you to understand. Just because they meant it for evil doesn't mean God won't use it for good. He can turn every betrayal into a blessing, every heartbreak into a higher calling. But you've got to partner with Him. You've got to stop rescuing people who are only comfortable when you're broken. You've got to stop putting yourself last in a life God created for greatness. There's a reason the Bible says to guard your heart, not just open it. Not just share it, guard it, because out of it flows the issues of life. And if you give your heart to the wrong people, they'll shape your life with lies. They'll speak death over what God breathed life into. And then you'll wonder why your joy keeps slipping through your fingers like sand. I'm not telling you to become cold. I'm telling you to become careful. I'm not telling you to be selfish. I'm telling you to be strategic. You can love people without losing yourself. You can serve without surrendering your soul. God never told you to die on a cross for people who crucify your peace. That role's already been filled. It's time to rise. Time to recognize the treasure in you. Time to stop waiting on others to validate your value and start walking in the truth that God already established. You don't need their approval. You don't need their apology. You need alignment with heaven. That's where your real strength is. That's where your direction will come from. Not from the noise of damaged people, but from the still small voice of a holy God. And if that means walking alone for a while, so be it. If that means silence in the face of betrayal, let it be. If it means shutting the door on those who only show up to take, shut it gently and don't open it again. Because your energy, your purpose, your destiny, they're too important to keep wasting. They damaged you intentionally. But hear me, God will restore you intentionally. He will build you back, not as you were, but better, stronger, wiser, and this time you won't be begging for crumbs when He's trying to prepare you a feast. You'll know your worth. You'll know your mission. And you'll never again let broken people define a life God made whole. You were never called to carry what others broke. You were called to rise in what God redeemed. Let's not fool ourselves. Not everybody in your life was sent to love you. Not everybody came to lift you up. There are people who walk into your life smiling on the outside but carrying destruction on the inside. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake their presence for a blessing when they were really a burden in disguise. You see, some people don't come to build, they come to break. They come to confuse, to delay, to distract. And if you don't have discernment, you'll waste years watering relationships that were never meant to grow. Some of you have been asking, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, you didn't do anything wrong. You just didn't realize who they were. You kept assuming they had your heart. You believed that because you wouldn't hurt them, they wouldn't hurt you. But here's the truth, people don't always treat you based on who you are. They treat you based on who they are. And if their heart is poisoned, if their soul is full of envy, no amount of kindness on your part can change what's broken on theirs. Some people will draw near to you just to study how to destroy you. They'll watch you, listen to you, act interested, even pretend to support you. But behind the scenes, their goal is to make sure you never rise above them. You've been wondering why they never clap when you win, why they disappear when you're joyful, why they grow silent when God starts blessing you. It's because they were never truly for you. They were just close enough to keep you from becoming more than they were comfortable with. We live in a world where jealousy doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like fake compliments. Sometimes it sounds like backhanded praise. Sometimes it comes in the form of advice that tells you to tone it down or play it safe. But the enemy has always used subtlety to sow doubt in the minds of God's people. He did it in the garden, and he's still doing it today, often through the very people we think we can trust. That's why you have to stop giving everyone unlimited access to your life. Just because someone shows up doesn't mean they were sent. Just because someone says the right words doesn't mean they carry the right spirit. There are people who smile while you suffer. People who cheer you on while secretly hoping you fail. And the enemy will use those very people to drain your strength and delay your destiny if you let him. But thank God he gives us wisdom if we ask for it. And sometimes wisdom looks like stepping back. Sometimes wisdom means cutting ties with people you once cried to. Sometimes wisdom is realizing that peace isn't found in keeping everyone happy, it's found in keeping your circle holy. Jesus himself didn't entrust himself to everyone. He knew what was in people's hearts. He ministered to the crowds, but he confided in the few. If even the Son of God was careful with who he allowed close, how much more should we be? You see, when you let the wrong people stay too long, they begin to shape your thinking. They influence your decisions. You find yourself holding back, not because God hasn't called you, but because someone else's opinion has become louder than his voice. You start shrinking your dreams so they can feel secure. You lower your standards so they won't feel convicted. But you weren't called to dim your light. You were called to shine in the fullness of who God made you to be. Don't apologize for growing. Don't feel guilty for setting boundaries. That's not pride, that's protection. And you have every right to protect what God is building in your life. You have every right to remove people who only come to take, never to give. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace over chaos. You don't owe anyone access just because they've been around for a long time. Some people were only meant to be in your life for a season. And that season has ended. You tried to hold on because your heart is loyal. But don't confuse loyalty with self-sabotage. Don't keep feeding what's been starving your spirit. Don't keep hoping they'll change when God has already shown you who they are. This is not about bitterness. This is about clarity. It's about taking off the blindfold and seeing things for what they really are. Some people came to build. Others came to break. And once you know which is which, it's your responsibility to choose accordingly. You were not created to be a casualty of someone else's dysfunction. You were created to be a vessel of God's glory. So protect your heart, watch your circle, and never again confuse destruction for devotion. There's a truth that so many of us struggle to accept, a truth that cuts deep but is necessary to hear. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. No matter how much you want to help others, no matter how much love you have in your heart, If your own spirit is drained dry, you have nothing left to give. You see, God created us to live in community, to bear one another's burdens, to serve and support one another. But He never intended for you to be the only one carrying the weight all the time. And He never intended for your soul to be worn out because you keep giving your energy to those who take without giving back. Think about Jesus Himself. When His ministry demanded everything from Him, when crowds pressed in, needs multiplied, and opposition rose, He didn't keep going without rest. He often withdrew to quiet places to pray, to be refreshed, to reconnect with the Father. He understood that even the Son of God needed restoration. If Jesus needed time to recharge, how much more do you? How much more do you need to protect the wellspring of your life? But many of us don't see it that way. We have been taught to believe that self-sacrifice means always putting others first, no matter the cost. We've been told that to love others, we must empty ourselves completely, even if it leaves us broken, exhausted, and spiritually bankrupt. But that is not the love that God calls us to. True love includes wisdom. True love knows when to say enough. True love understands that you cannot give what you do not have. When you keep giving and giving to people who never give back, people who drain your time, your energy, your joy, you begin to lose yourself. You start waking up tired, going to bed empty. You lose sight of your purpose because all your focus is on keeping others afloat. You forget that God has called you to live abundantly, not just to survive. You forget that He has called you to be strong, not just to endure. You forget that your life has value beyond what you can do for others. It's hard to say no, isn't it? Especially when it's someone you care about. Especially when it's someone who once meant a lot to you. But there comes a time when saying no is the most loving thing you can do, loving to yourself and loving to them. Because if you keep enabling their dependence on you, you are not helping them grow. You are not giving them wings to fly. You are only teaching them to rely on your sacrifice and not on God's provision. The Apostle Paul knew what it meant to labor for others, but he also knew the importance of setting boundaries. He taught that while we bear one another's burdens, we must also carry our own load. He understood that there is a limit to what we can bear without losing our own strength. And he modeled a life of balance, working hard, serving faithfully, but also resting and being renewed. Your soul is like a well. When it is full, you can water the garden of your life and the lives of those around you. But when it is empty, all you can do is watch your garden wither. You cannot give life to others if you have none yourself. So it is not selfish to protect your soul. It is necessary. It is part of honoring the gift God has given you, this body, this spirit, this precious life. Sometimes you have to step back and say, I need time to be restored. Sometimes you have to take a break from people who demand too much without giving anything in return. Sometimes you have to choose solitude, prayer, and rest over exhaustion, people-pleasing, and burnout, because God is not pleased when His children are worn out and broken. He delights when we walk in His strength, shining His light, standing firm in our purpose. Remember, Jesus didn't just preach about love, He lived it. And part of His love was knowing when to stop, when to rest, when to refill His Spirit. We must follow His example. We must be good stewards of our own hearts, because only when you are whole can you truly be a blessing to others. You are not made to be an endless well of service to others while neglecting yourself. You are made to thrive, to be renewed daily, to walk in peace and power. And that renewal comes when you prioritize your own spiritual health, your own emotional well-being, and your own physical rest. God wants you to be strong, not just for you, but for the sake of those who need you. But you can't be strong if you're empty. You can't pour His love into others if you don't first allow His love to fill you. So guard your energy, guard your time, guard your heart. Learn to say no when necessary and do it with grace. Your life depends on it. Because when you honor yourself, you honor the one who created you. When you take care of your spirit, you prepare yourself to serve others more fully. When you stop wasting your energy on those who do not value it, you open the door to the blessings God is waiting for you. Don't be afraid to rest, to recharge, to prioritize yourself. It is not pride, it is wisdom. It is obedience, and it will set you free. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. Guard your soul and let God fill you up again. There comes a moment in every life when God brings you to a place of painful clarity, a moment when the mask falls off, the veil is lifted, and you finally see people for who they really are, and it hurts. It hurts because the ones you defended, the ones you sacrificed for, the ones you believed in with all your heart, are the very ones who used your goodness as a weakness. They took advantage of your loyalty. They played with your mercy. And some of them didn't just hurt you, they meant to. Now that's a difficult truth to accept, because we don't want to believe that people we loved could be capable of such things. We try to rationalize, to excuse, to explain it all away. Maybe they were just going through something. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe if I'd just done more, they wouldn't have walked away. But deep down, you know the difference between a mistake and a pattern? Between a moment of weakness and a heart set on harm. The people I'm talking about didn't stumble into hurting you, they made a choice. And they made it more than once. There are people who study your strengths so they can exploit your vulnerabilities. People who pretend to love you while secretly resenting you. People who clap when you fall and go silent when you rise. And when you start recognizing that, it shakes you, because you realize it wasn't just disappointment, it was betrayal. It wasn't just neglect, it was intention. But I want to tell you something that will bring healing if you let it. Recognizing the intent doesn't mean you have to live in bitterness. It doesn't mean you have to carry resentment. It means you finally have permission to stop blaming yourself for what they did. It means you can finally stop carrying the weight of their choices on your shoulders. You are not the reason they lied. You are not the reason they manipulated. You are not the reason they walked away when you needed them the most. When Joseph stood before his brothers after they sold him into slavery, after they watched him suffer without remorse, after years of pain and silence, he didn't pretend nothing happened. He looked them in the eye and said, "You meant it for evil." He acknowledged the truth. But then he followed with something powerful. But God meant it for good. You see, there's something holy about facing the reality of what was done to you without letting it destroy who you are. There's a strength in naming the pain, but not becoming the pain. And that's where many of us get stuck. We try so hard to be strong that we forget we're still healing. We tell ourselves, "It's fine, I'm fine, I've moved on," but the wound is still open. And if you don't deal with it, if you don't bring it into the light of God's truth, it festers, it grows. It poisons your ability to trust again, to love again, to dream again. That's why this moment matters, because healing starts where honesty begins. And the honest truth is, yes, they meant to damage you. They knew what they were doing, and still they did it. But here's where grace steps in. What they meant to break you, God will use to build you. What they meant to silence, God will use to strengthen. What they tried to tear down, God is getting ready to raise up higher than it's ever been. But you can't walk into that future still holding on to the past. You can't embrace healing while clinging to those who caused the harm. There are doors God won't open until you close the ones that were never meant to be opened in the first place. There are blessings being delayed because you're still entertaining conversations with people who were sent to distract, not to develop. You have to protect your purpose. You have to guard the oil God placed in your life. Not everyone deserves access to you, not because you're better, but because you're chosen. And chosen people must live with clarity. You can love them, you can forgive them, you can even pray for them. But you no longer have to keep them close. You no longer have to second guess what God has already revealed. You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not overly sensitive. You saw what you saw. You felt what you felt. And now it's time to let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more. Because your peace matters more. Because your future matters more. The enemy will try to convince you that the damage done to you disqualified you. But God says the damage is the very thing He'll use to glorify Himself through your life. You're not disqualified, you're destined. You're not broken beyond repair. You're being rebuilt for something greater. And the people who tried to bury you are about to see what happens when God steps in and breathes life into what others tried to destroy. Don't let their intention become your identity. What they meant to damage, God will use to deliver. Let Him. There's a reason God tells us to guard our hearts. Not just to keep evil out, but to keep peace in. Because the truth is, when you've been betrayed, when your kindness has been mistaken for weakness, when your open hands have been slapped instead of held, something inside of you starts to shut down. You begin to question everyone. You build walls instead of boundaries. You assume that every new voice is just another echo of the last person who hurt you. But listen to me, don't let one season of pain convince you that love is a lie. See, the enemy would love for you to become so wounded by what people did to you that you never trust again. He would love for you to become so bitter that you mistake isolation for healing. But real healing, true, God-given healing isn't about retreating from the world forever. It's about learning to be wise without becoming hard. It's about learning how to protect your peace without forfeiting your purpose. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table, and that's not arrogance, that's discernment. Some people were not sent by God, they were sent as distractions, as tests, as sandpaper to reveal what was hidden in you. They were never meant to stay. But what happens is we try to hold on to them. We confuse assignment with attachment. We convince ourselves that if we just love a little harder, try a little longer, they'll change, but they don't. And then we end up depleted, confused, ashamed, wondering why we keep ending up in the same place with different people who do the same thing. Let me tell you something important. Just because someone enters your life doesn't mean they belong there. Just because they say the right words doesn't mean they carry the right spirit. And just because you have the capacity to carry people doesn't mean it's your calling to fix them. You are not the Savior. You are not their solution. You were not created to be someone's emotional punching bag while calling it love. What happens when you don't protect your peace is that you begin to normalize chaos. You begin to expect dysfunction. You begin to live with low expectations because that's all you've known. But God did not call you to settle. He didn't save you so you could barely survive emotionally. He called you to live in the fullness of His promises. Peace is not a luxury, it's part of your inheritance. Jesus Himself said, "My peace I give to you, not as the world gives." His peace doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't require you to exhaust yourself for approval. It doesn't leave when others do. His peace is steady, deep, sustaining. But in order to receive it fully, you have to remove the things and the people that continually disturb it. You have to choose to walk away from the noise even when it's familiar, even when it's painful, even when it's someone you thought would be in your life forever. You see, people who have peace in their hearts don't need to prove anything. They're not reactive. They're not constantly in conflict. They know who they are and whose they are. They don't chase, beg, or compete for attention. That kind of peace only comes from a deep-rooted relationship with God, one that says, even if everyone walks away, I'm still whole. Even if I stand alone, I still stand in grace. And I know it's not easy to walk away. It's not easy to choose solitude over shared pain. But sometimes the greatest act of love you can show yourself is choosing quiet over chaos. Sometimes protecting your peace means letting people go without needing to explain yourself. Sometimes it means turning down the volume of the world so you can finally hear the voice of God again. When you let go of what harms you, you make room for what heals you. When you stop chasing people who never valued you, you create space for those who will see you the way God sees you. You are not created to live in survival mode. You are not designed to be emotionally battered in the name of faithfulness. You are a temple of the Holy Spirit, and that temple deserves peace. Protecting your peace may look like saying no more often. It may look like fewer phone calls, fewer explanations, fewer invitations. It may look like deleting numbers that once meant everything to you. But let me tell you, what you're gaining is worth far more than what you're losing. You're gaining clarity, you're gaining strength, you're gaining the ability to hear God again without interference. You owe no one access to your peace if they have consistently brought you pain. You owe no one closeness if they've proven themselves untrustworthy. Forgiveness is free, reconciliation is earned, and peace, it's priceless. Don't hand it over so easily. Don't let them steal what God gave you. Protect your peace. Guard your joy. Keep your heart soft and your boundaries strong. One of the hardest things we'll ever have to do is choose to keep walking when everything in us wants to turn back. When the pain is loud and the silence is heavy. When your heart feels like it's been through a storm and your mind is still replaying every word, every moment, every betrayal. But even in that place, even in the confusion and the ache, God is still calling you forward. Forward in faith, forward in purpose, forward in healing. Because what lies ahead of you is still greater than what's behind you. You may not see it yet, but there's beauty being built in the ashes of what they broke. There's something being prepared for you, something so holy, so sacred that it couldn't come until you first let go. Sometimes God doesn't allow certain people to stay because they can't walk where He's taking you. They don't carry the reverence for the call on your life. They don't understand the weight of your purpose. And if they stay, they would damage the very thing God is trying to restore. That's why you can't go back. That's why you can't spend your nights trying to figure out what you could have done differently. That's why you can't keep rehearsing conversations and writing apologies for wounds you didn't cause. There's a line in the sand now, and once God reveals the truth, He expects you to walk in it. Not everyone you lose is a loss. Some were lessons, some were mirrors. Some were the exact push you needed to finally take your eyes off people and place them back on the Lord. Yes, they damaged you. Yes, they knew what they were doing. But their plan is not greater than God's purpose. And you've come too far to let what they did be the last word over your life. You're like too many tears. You've endured too much in silence. You've grown too much to return to the version of you that needed their validation to feel worthy. You don't need their apology to move forward. You don't need their understanding to find peace. All you need is the strength to take the next step, just one step closer to healing, one step closer to purpose, one step closer to the future God already prepared for you. It may feel slow, it may feel quiet, but forward is still forward. Don't despise the small steps. Don't underestimate the power of just getting up again. Every time you choose not to respond in anger, you're moving forward. Every time you forgive when it hurts, you're moving forward. Every time you choose to pray instead of panic, to worship instead of worry, to walk away instead of retaliate, you are moving forward. And let me tell you something, there's a blessing that only obedience unlocks. When God sees that you're willing to trust Him over your emotions, when He sees that you're no longer looking to people for your worth, He begins to open doors that no man can shut. He begins to restore things you didn't even know were broken. He brings divine connections into your life, people who love you purely, without motive. People who cover you in prayer, not control. People who see your calling, not just your usefulness. But first you have to decide, I'm not going back. I'm not shrinking to fit into the version of me that tolerated disrespect. I'm not repeating cycles just because they're familiar. I'm not giving access to those who once used proximity to bring pain. I am walking forward. I am becoming whole. I am choosing peace over performance, purpose over people-pleasing, destiny over drama. And yes, it takes courage. Courage to say goodbye to what once felt like home. Courage to walk alone for a season. Courage to believe that God's plan is still good even when it hurts. But the reward is worth it. The healing is real. The joy is on the other side. And the version of you that's waiting beyond this valley, she's strong, she's whole. She's not afraid anymore. She no longer explains herself to those committed to misunderstanding her. She no longer settles for half love, almost friendships, or one-sided loyalty. She no longer entertains the idea that her worth is tied to someone else's ability to see it. She has learned that being alone with God is far better than being surrounded by people who make her question who she is. So walk forward, limp if you must, crawl if you have to. But don't stay in what God has called you out of. Don't build a life around what broke you. Don't decorate a prison just because it's familiar. You were made for more. You were created for freedom. You were destined to rise from this. They may have meant to damage you, but God is using every wound as a testimony. Keep walking.